Well, good evening, everyone. Last week we heard that Nick Turner, who served the people of Tendring District for over 25 years, died on Thursday. And so we hold his family and friends in our prayers this evening. And then on Friday there was the death of an as yet unnamed woman just around the corner from us on Skelmersdale Road. And so our verses this evening come from John's Gospel. Jesus' great friend Lazarus has died, and Jesus comforts Mary and Martha, who are Lazarus' sisters. Jesus said to Martha, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live, even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she replied. "I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is come into the world." And so a prayer. Lord God, we thank you that your Son Jesus has come into the world and offers life and hope in the face of death. Today we lift before you the family and friends of Nick Turner, the family and friends of the lady who lived on Skelmersdale Road, and anyone else we know who is grieving at this time. Please comfort them in their loss and help them to know Jesus as the resurrection and the life. We pray for our time together this evening and ask you to give us all the wisdom, unity and purpose, and clarity of thought we need. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. And the prayer for this week in the Church of England calendar. Almighty God, whose most dear Son went not up to joy, but first he suffered pain, and entered not into glory before he was crucified, mercifully grant that we, walking in the way of the cross, may find it none other than the way of life and peace. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who is alive and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. Well, please do be seated, and I hope the meeting goes really well.
Good evening, councillors, member of the public. Welcome to this full council meeting held here at the Town Hall, Clacton, and may we have a good meeting. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. I have apologies for absence from Councillor Wiggins, Councillor Paul Honeywood, Councillor Sue Honeywood, Councillor Guglielmi, Councillor Casey and Councillor Thompson. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to take this opportunity to wish Dan a speedy recovery. I hope he gets well quite quickly. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting of the council, and that's on pages 7 to 12. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to move them.
Can I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, Chairman.
Thank you. Carried. Everybody? All in favour? All agreed. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest.
If I may, Chairman, I will be declaring an interest in both items 19 and 20, and we'll be leaving the room during the discussion of those. Thank you.
Item 4, announcement by the Chair. I have none, obviously. I haven't got none of those. Item 5, announcement by the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got two announcements. One is that as we know that you've had briefings at the last two council meetings and all member briefings around the local government reorganisation submission, which was due in on the 21st of March, last Friday. And I'm pleased to say that that was submitted on time. It was supported by all 15 local authorities and the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner in the submission, and that has now gone forward to government. the government have notified us that they have received it and that we expect some kind of response during the course of mid-April to late April. When we get that response, I will advise you accordingly. Thank you, Chairman. That's my first announcement. My second announcement is, as alluded to by the Vicar, is regarding Councillor Turner. So, Chairman, it is with sadness that I formally report that on the 20th of March 2025, Councillor Turner passed away. Councillor Turner was a long-standing member of the Council, having first been elected to it in May 1999, representing Frinton. He served on the Cabinet between 2010 and 2017, holding portfolios of services including parking, environment, coast protection, and also as Deputy Leader of the Council between 2014 and 2015. At Frinton and Walton Town Council, he also represented the Frinton ward. Nick was passionate about the Walton backwaters and the coastal protection, and was a dedicated member of the Naze Management Board. And during his time on Cabinet, he oversaw a number of initiatives. Probably the one which most of us will most remember will be the £36 million coastal defences, which saw the replenishment of the beaches and a lot of associated works around that, and it was on time and on budget, as I say. He was also as part of the development of a new sea wall at the Naze. So some significant infrastructure work, but also environment, including the previous round of the waste contract. Our thoughts are with Nick and his wife and family at this difficult time. I was able to speak to Nick on the day before he passed, actually, and I thanked him for the work which he had done for this council and for the community. And I was very pleased to see that. Unfortunately, Nick couldn't speak, but Sue said to me, he's put his thumbs up. So I think was very pleased and proud to be able to say that we recognise the work that he had done, and he heard that we recognised that. As a mark of respect, the flag is at half-mast at the Town Hall. And I've just also add that Councillor Ferguson has put a yellow rose on the front there. And for those of you who remember, Nick always wore a yellow rose for council meetings and for meetings. And he also always wore his Tendring District Council tie, which I have replaced with my one as there, just as also recognising Nick. So I just to say to you, Councillor, that whether you'd like to have a minute's silence in terms of for Nick, please. If you'd like to stand.
Councillors, please be upstanding for a minute's silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. By request, and I think it's only right as a long-standing Conservative, the Conservative group will lead the tributes to Nick.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Leader. And I now know how the Leader feels when the Chief Executive steals his thunder. Good evening, members. I feel both saddened and honoured to be standing here leading this tribute to Nick. It's unusual for us to be remembering a colleague whilst that person is, in effect, still in office at this council. Nicholas William Turner. Nick, a formidable force within this council, an extremely effective ward councillor. You always knew if you asked Nick, something would be done. Within the authority, Nick held a variety of significant positions, from the very highest as chairman of the council in 2009 to 2010, to several cabinet roles. I was privileged to serve on the cabinet with Nick when he was deputy leader and cabinet member for environment and coastal protection. It was during this time that Nick oversaw what was the largest coastal defence scheme project in the country, delivering 5 kilometres of new beaches and sea defences from Clacton Pier to Holland-on-Sea. A £36 million scheme delivered on time and under budget, something that Nick was very proud of. Nick loved to battle with the North Sea, as he called it, extending the footprint and map of tendering. It was this passion about our coastline that saw Nick, with a few other councillors, becoming founding members of the Naze Management Board. Here, Nick was instrumental in championing schemes that helped protect and enhance the Naze, making it one of the gems that attracts so many visitors to our district each year. I recall one particular scheme on the Naze where the huge excavator uncovered a major piece of sewage pipe that nobody knew was there, potentially scuppering the plans and the budget for the whole programme. Nick was down the Naze in a flash, helping sorting out that problem and getting things back on track. Dedication. Above all, Nick was a man of integrity. He didn't chase popularism. He didn't move around the political floor, chasing the winds of change. He stayed true to what he believed in and sought confirmation at the ballot box, social media. We will remember him for his idiosyncrasies. We will remember him for his controversies. It's ironic and apt that his name appears in our agenda this evening. But most of all, we will remember him for his unwavering passion for tendering and the area that he loved so much. I wish to express my thanks for all those that went to visit him during his last days in hospital. He was extremely grateful for every person that went to see him. A man who served his community for a quarter of a century, a rarity these days. We will miss him tremendously. Our thoughts and prayers go out to Sue and his family. Nick, we thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. And you think it's bad going after Ian? I now have to follow you, but what great words. Some of my own. Councillor Nick Turner, without a doubt, will be remembered as one of the longest serving, hardest working, most passionate and thoroughly dedicated elected members we have ever had in the history of Tendring District Council. Anyone that met or worked with Nick over the years will know that he took his duties extremely seriously, both as a district and town councillor, and represented his residents with incredible commitment, energy and enthusiasm. He was most certainly a man of principle and never afraid to speak his mind. He said what he believed and he believed what he said. Whether you agreed with his views or not was sometimes by the by, but he was respected widely for his courageous and straight-talking approach. It will be said many times tonight, I'm sure, but he generally was one of life's true characters. Those who had the privilege of working closely with Nick and getting to know him on a more personal level will know that he was a very warm, welcoming, caring and personal individual, genuinely interested and supportive of others. He really enjoyed spending time with his fellow members and officers to talk about different issues, test different ideas and theories, and to share that extensive knowledge and experience on a wide range of subjects, particularly history, politics and economics, with an interesting and often amusing anecdote for every situation, including some from his career in the hospitality industry. I'm sure he will receive many tributes tonight and in the coming weeks, recalling his accomplishments as a ward member, town councillor, former chairman of the council, and a cabinet member who, working with partners, oversaw extraordinary investment in our coastline and sea defences. But tonight I wanted to pay tribute in particular to his more recent work as both the chairman of the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee and a joint committee for the Tendring Colchester Bordens Garden Community. Nick's photo was on the inside cover of our current adopted local plan, and for good reason. Through his skillful and effective chairmanship, he was able to get important and often difficult decisions on the future growth for our district made, whilst ensuring that anybody with an interest was always given fair opportunity to put forward their ideas and views and concerns were discussed. His knowledge and understanding of planning as a discipline and our district as a place came through his positive working relationship with our officers. His passion for the subject and his incredible ability to both research and read hundreds and hundreds of pages of documents, reports and articles in advance of public meetings. As chairman of the committee, he used to announce at the beginning of each meeting how many pages of documentation had been reported to the committee, and I can pretty much guarantee with some confidence that he had read every single one. Even though Nick was in a difficult political group to my own, I was very happy as the incoming leader of the council to support him staying in the chair for those committee meetings. On the garden community, the challenge of a joint committee, including elected councils from 3 councils, with different political makeups, overseeing the planning of the largest and one of the most important developments, not just locally, but nationally. Again, his skill in the chair was on such an important project was widely recognised and respected. And as the project progresses in the coming months and years, I hope Nick's role in helping us get this far will be long remembered. And with that in mind, his legacy to this council and our district will live on into the future, both as guardians of Tendering's history and its tradition, particularly in Frinton, but as a visionary for the future and the communities that future generations will call home. To Nick's wife, family and friends, I know I'm not alone in offering my deepest sympathies and condolences, and wherever you sit in the chamber, I'm sure we can all reflect positively on and celebrate his service to the council and his significant achievements. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Ferguson.
It would be difficult to follow those 2 tributes to Nick, but this is a very personal one. In 2007, I was accidentally elected as a councillor. I was told that I was a paper candidate, I'd never get in, and lo and behold, I did. The first person to greet me, to support me, and to walk me through the complexities of being a new councillor was Nick Turner. I want to say thank you to him and all of the group that was there at the time for helping me along that road, but a few words about Nick. He was inimitable, supportive, controversial, passionate, loquacious, a bon vivant and lover of life. He loved his wife, he loved his family, and he loved good wine. R.I.P. Nick, and cheers. Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chairman. I stood with Nick at the last Tendring District Council election as his running mate. As the remaining councillor for Frinton, it falls on me to pick up Nick's legacy, a task I am humbled to take on. So remembering Mr. Frinton, Nick. He always said that Frinton was a seaside town, not a resort, that it was a unique place and it was not a place that time forgot, but a place that was proud to be traditional in its values. And while Nick, to steal another former councillor's words, would pickle Frinton in aspic, he would always defend doggedly against change for change's sake. In fact, almost any and all change. There we slightly disagreed, but I, like Nick, believe that Frinton should keep its unique charms and resist some so-called progress. Nick was implacably opposed to the building of my house in Frinton, the house that I now live in. He saw the development as garden grabbing. He also wasn't too pleased with the Art Deco style, due to connotations of the Frinton Park estate, which was, at the time it was planned, destined to be a resort for Frinton. In a playful dig at Nick, the boat alongside the house is named the Last Resort. When he visited and saw the name of the boat, he smiled. He got the joke. 5 years ago, on joining the Conservatives, Nick espoused doing your time rather than allowing former UKIP newcomers into Frinton Conservatives. I went elsewhere and did my time. Then coming back to Frinton and having the privilege of working alongside Nick. So politically, I've worked against Nick and with Nick. I'm not sure which was easier. So our visions were different for Frinton, but we compromised on policy, although the last thing Nick said to me was over one of those compromises. Stop it. He was referring to the marquee on the greensward. Nick was a truly welcoming person when he wanted to be. Even when Jeff Bray and I were UKIP, we were welcomed by Nick into the Frinton Memorial Club. In fact, he, with Giles Watling, both Conservatives at the time, signed our nominations to become members. Many a long night was had in the Mem discussing politics, particularly after council meetings. In fact, the last TDC council meeting Nick attended only a few weeks ago, we repaired to the Mem, and he managed to have a few jars. It seemed such a short time ago that we were doing that. Nick could be his own worst enemy. Nick was not very woke. He came from a different time. His views on women and the Germans were well known and of a particular age. I think it was sad that we as a council could not be more inclusive towards Nick and accommodate his espoused views. That is, after all, where diversity and inclusion is meant to be all about. First and foremost, Nick was an advocate for Frinton. He had strong views about Frinton being a seaside town, not a resort. He would fight for Frinton, its uniqueness, and while that often meant more than a nod to the past, that is what he represented for his beloved Frinton. It is known by almost everybody that Nick ran a hotel in Frinton, having been a hotelier for much of his life. I often had interesting conversations with him about the nuances of how to cook traditional high-end recipes. While his knowledge was great, I always remember a former leader of this council warmly remembering that going into Nick's hotel was a bit like visiting Fawlty Towers. Given his views about women, Nick was always very fond and appreciative of my wife. He said that Penny got him. As Penny was a couple of years older than him, I guess that means that he appreciated her perspective from that time too. Penny saw him a couple of days before he died, and he was definitely comforted by her words at that time. Talking of women, behind every great man is a wife rolling her eyes, and Sue had plenty of eye-rolling to do. So to Sue, his long-suffering wife, my sincere condolences. He couldn't have done it without you. Finally, I hope that Nick can leave a legacy for this council. We all need to be more acceptance of difference. Diversity, equality, inclusion needs tolerance of others' views, whether we agree with them or not. I hope that recent events will focus the minds of this council on how it treats people of different opinions. From me, Nick, rest in peace, Mr. Frinton.
Councillor Calver, please remain seated.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'm not going to sugarcoat this, but bear with me. During the 18 years that I sat opposite Councillor Nick Turner in this chamber, there were very few occasions that we agreed. And I think on that, I can say the same for every Labour councillor that sat alongside me. I am going to go further and say that I did not always approve of the manner in which Nick conducted council business. But I will add to that the Holland Sea defences, the waste and recycling contract, the local plan. It was Nick's drive that achieved that. So I accept there was a time where his way of doing things was possibly necessary.
He was tough, he was uncompromising, he was confrontational. But I can say from personal experience, he could also be kind, caring and considerate. On the night of the local elections in 2015, when the Labour group on this council had taken an absolute hiding due to the national picture, and we had lost many good councillors who didn't deserve to lose their seat, the Conservatives had retained control of the council, and Nick had every right to be celebrating with his colleagues. He wasn't. He was standing with his hand on my shoulder, reassuring me, "Ride it out, Gary. Labour will be back. You've got the history, you've got what you stand for, you will come through this." Nick Turner, the defender of socialism. In 2018, when I made it known that I was undergoing treatment for prostate cancer, very quickly I had 2 phone calls from members on the other side of the chamber, wanting to know how I was and how things were going. One was Carlo, the other was Nick Turner. An act of great kindness and consideration, which I greatly appreciated. So, a very complex man, and knowing of that complexity, I was searching for a way that I could end this tribute in a manner that hopefully everybody in the chamber can agree with. And I settled on the final instruction given by Freddie Mercury to the executive of his will in 1991. "You can do anything you like with my music, but don't ever let me become boring." I think as long as we talk about Nick Turner, like Freddie Mercury, he will never become boring. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. And there's some amazing words already come out for a man who was a long-standing, very capable and very able councillor. Controversial sometimes, I think we all know that, but he was controversial because he was passionate, and passion is something that we all need. And some of the words I've just heard, yes, many times I didn't agree with Councillor Turner too, but then if we all agreed, we wouldn't need a debating chamber, would we? So, not such a bad thing. I did try to write something for this evening, but I just couldn't get it inside 3 minutes. How do you with Nick Turner? There's so much more to say. So I decided to do it off the cuff, as I usually do, which will probably sound better anyway. Nick's achievements are all well known within the council, but apart from being a councillor, he was also a person, and he was, to me, a friend. Which may sound strange. I started life in this council on a different side to Nick. Yet, within the first few days, he's invited me for a drink. We went, had a drink, a coffee. He told me lots of things about council, different people on the council. And over the years, I gained huge amounts of knowledge from a man who possessed what appeared to be an unlimited resource. Nick was also one of the first people to come and see me after I sadly lost my wife some years ago. He was caring, as has already been mentioned. He was interested, and he wanted to spend time. He was the driving force that allowed me to get the memorial I wanted for my wife. It was Nick who helped me do that at a time when, if I'm honest, I wasn't performing at my best. And I thank him for that. He is, in my opinion, a great man. Controversial, yes. Easy to disagree with, yes. Passionate, absolutely. But a great man. And one I think will be long remembered in this council for many, many reasons. We'll never see the like of him again. So, rest in peace, Nick. Rest in peace. Your work is done. And to his family and friends, I send all the condolences I can. they've lost someone who will simply be impossible to replace. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Mark Cousins.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, I think most of it has been said, but I was a town councillor before becoming a TDC district councillor, and I think in those early days, you know, I really valued Nick's advice. He was always a good guide for some of those, you know, new councillors. But I remember, you know, Nick was very black and white about everything. There were no grey areas. And I think sometimes, I think back at some of the comments that have been made, he had no moderation button, but he did mean what he said. And I remember, I think it was my very first meeting at Frinton and Walton Town Council, and I was one of 3 councillors, new councillors then. The other 2 were ladies, so I was the only male councillor who had been elected, you know, freshly that election. And I remember Nick standing up and saying, well, for the benefit of the new lady members, and one of the lady members hit the ceiling, and it was lucky it wasn't in this building, but, you know, he did manage to put his foot in it quite regularly. But visiting Nick in the last few days, I think lots of us who have been there, it's difficult talking about the future when you know someone hasn't necessarily got a long time to go. And when we, you know, I was with Andrea and sitting there and what you talked to Nick about the future, and I did have to say to him, I know that even over the time that you've been ill, I've come to you and you've given me advice. And I think going forward, you know, Frinton and Walton Tendring District Council, I know I'm going to look forward and think, when we get to those hard decisions, I'm going to be thinking, what would Nick have said about this? And I'm going to take it, you know, that forward. You know, what would Nick have said? And I'll just leave it at that.
Councillor Morrison.
I am happy to speak, but I do know that Councillor Chapman actually indicated before I did. I don't know. Okay. This will be fairly short and sweet. I didn't know Nick for very long. I did meet him before I became a district councillor, and it was at Dovercourt. And it was quite a windy day, and he came along, and the first thing I did notice was the yellow rose, because he certainly always had the rose. I'll never forget, we had a conversation about the seagulls who were particularly noisy. And he said to me, of course, he said, we have them better trained in Frinton. He said, they fly upside down. He said, we only let them turn over when they get to Walton. And I've never forgotten that. I think to say that Nick and I came from opposite ends of the spectrum, you won't be at all surprised to hear that. And we've have had one or two fairly robust conversations in committee meetings. But I will say that he's always come up to me afterwards. The first one was my very first committee meeting. And I won't go into what actually happened, but anyway, I didn't appreciate a particular thing that he said. And he came up to me afterwards, and I fully expected to get a little bit of a hairdryer treatment, and I didn't. And he said, I respect the fact, young lady, that you spoke up, he said, and pulled me up on something, and you were quite right to do that. And I appreciated that. It happened on a few occasions on other things, but I always felt that afterwards I didn't agree with him a lot of the time, but I always felt the one thing I could say is that I'd actually go and have a drink with him at a bar afterwards. I can't say I'd say that to everybody, but even they were on opposite sides. I did very much. He actually said to me, the difference between you and me, Pam, he said, is you want to help everybody. He said, I want to help those that will help themselves. He said, and that's the only difference between us. He did actually ring me when I put forward a motion about the ambulance service, the dreadful times, and I brought that motion to the council. And Nick phoned me up straight away and he said, I would very much like to second that. And we had lengthy conversations and I was very pleased to say, yes, I'd be very happy for you to do that. So you're right, he was a character and he will be sorely missed. And that's really all I can say on him, but he certainly was a character. Thank you.
Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. I first met Nick at Brightlingsea on the seafront, middle of winter, going round the paddling pool and expected Graham and I to go for a paddle. So I think we had to sort of steer him away from the seaside. Nick was unique, a character, but I think what most sticks in our mind as a group is what he said and what he did, he totally believed in. And I think that came over so evidently to all of us. It didn't matter what political party you were, if you wanted advice, Nick would be there to help you. And I think that's probably what sticks in our mind most. Everything, you know, everybody else has said, we all totally agree with. Personally, I've got to say, the advice he gave me on my roses, they are doing extremely well. So thank you, Nick.
Councillor Scott.
Thank you, Chairman. A lot of colleagues here have said a lot of stuff I wanted to say about Councillor Nick Turner. What I can say is, when I got first elected in a by-election in 2002, when I represented Alresford, Thorrington and Freighting back in 2002, Councillor Turner came up to me and says, "Welcome to TDC. I hope you have so much fun." I didn't know who he was from Adam. But he says, "Oh, I'm from a different group. I'm a Conservative, and I can see you're a Liberal Democrat." And I said, "Yeah, thank you." And then he used to have a really good sense of humour. I used to sit next to him. One side of me was Councillor Nick Turner. The other side, I had Councillor John Hughes. And so I had both characters, both sides of me, either side. And it was really, really interesting to listen to what Councillor Turner, what Nick said at committee meetings, what he did for our district, what he did for his ward of Frinton. And at one time, I had to go to Frinton because we were talking about beach huts a few years ago. And I didn't know where Nick lived. And I parked outside this big house in Frinton, and I didn't know he was in the garden. And he turned around, saw me, he goes, "Liberals can't park here. You've got to park somewhere else." And then he said, "Hey, how did you get through Frinton gates anyway? We don't let Liberals through the gates." So I said, "Oh, it probably wasn't working, Nick." But Nick was compassionate. He cared about his community. He cared about his district. He cared about the coastal communities. He cared about everything in TDC. A long-serving councillor, like Councillor Nick Turner, gave me a lot of advice over the years as being a long-serving councillor myself, 23 years as a district councillor. And Nick always said to me, "Do your best. Do your best for your communities, the area that you represent." And then eventually, over the years, I was the only last Lib Dem councillor on TDC. And he said, one election night, says, "Sorry about that, but in a couple of years' time, next election, you might have a mate next time." And that's when Councillor Wiggins got elected. And he said, "Oh, you've got another mate now." Oh, thanks, Nick. Appreciate that. But no, Nick was a character, and he had a jokey side, but he had a serious side, and he put tendering first. And when he was chairman of TDC, he made a point of going around our district, visiting town and parish council. And he came to my area and he phoned me up and says, "I can't find Alresford. Can you tell me where it is?" So I had to tell him, just go on the B1027 and follow it if you were going towards Wivenhoe, and it'd be there on the left. He turns up and he says, "It's the furthest I've been in this part of the district, in the dark depths of West Tendring." So yeah, Nick will be surely missed. My condolences to Sue and his family. And I'm sure he's up there looking down on us, saying, "What are you guys making a fuss at me for?" No, he did a lot. Rest in peace, Nick.
Councillor Bush.
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's emotional listening to all these tributes about Nick. For me, as a new councillor back in 2017, my first meetings with Nick, you know, for me, as uncharted waters, I've never worked in any format in public sector. And I was intimidated by this formidable character. Yes, with Roses, always immaculate, always strongly spoken, always opinionated. And I was quite, as I say, intimidated. But after the meeting, he came up to me, put his arm around me and welcomed me. And from that moment, he guided me and gave me lots of confidence, which I desperately needed. And that was my first introduction with Nick. And as the more I got to know him, and in particular for me in recent years, when I've been sitting on the local planning policy and local plan committee, and with the garden communities, seeing him chair those meetings was impressive. It can only help your own confidences. He was there, steadfast, and in his marginal word, navigating troubled waters, and he said we can navigate to where we need to go because of the passion that he had. And listen to what Councillor Stevenson said. Some of those documents on the local plan and the planning policy are phenomenal, 600 pages, and he could literally know everything on every page. Not word for word, but he knew the facts, the detail. And when he was questioned at these meetings, both from local plan or the garden communities, he really knew an answer, or he could actually create a debate. So there was so much there. And I spent the last couple of days before he passed away, went to see him on a Saturday and a Tuesday. And even though his health had deteriorated considerably, the man that laid in that bed still was imposing and formidable, and the respect for someone like that stays with you. It's like a legend. And I've met lots of people in my life in businesses, but Nick was always someone that you could turn to if you had a problem, and he would give it the best he could. And he respected all councillors across all parties and all the disagreements that we may or may not have, but he did respect because he's proud of tendering, and he was so proud if he was elected to represent your ward in tendering, he thought what an honour and achievement, and that's something we should all be thankful for. So that's what I know. So many people knew him for a lot longer than me, but it's in my short term, but a big influence in terms of where I am today in local authority. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank all the councillors for their kind words and true words on behalf of his family. Thank you. Over to the Chief Exec.
Sorry, Chairman, just one very brief thing. On your tables, members, you have a credit card size, plasticised. This is the 2025-2026 council tax per bandee, which shows that TDC services for the council tax per bandee is 9p in the pound, and it also identifies what the services are. So it's there for you to be able to take with you, and hopefully you find it helpful when you have questions from residents or from other or from businesses. Thank you.
Item 7, statements by members of the Cabinet. Are there any?
Councillor Barry.
Councillor Barry.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to bring to members' attention the fact that we have a conference that's going to be held in this very theatre on Monday, the 19th of May. It's a full half day from 12 till 5, and it's about the launch of the sport and activity strategy across the district. There's going to be a marketplace, we have national speakers, we have workshops going on through the day, and we have invites going out or already out to all organisations, sporting bodies, schools, volunteers, and excuse me, interested parties to come along, listen, participate, and hopefully increase our community engagement across the district. So all councillors are very welcome to attend that and see what they can pick up for their particular wards or their, their residents. So that's Monday, the 19th of May, from 12 till 5. Thank you.
Apologies, councillors, I happen to miss number 6, so over to Mark Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I can see how you might have done that with my speech, but I haven't got anything to comment. Thank you.
It's hardly worth me saying that. Item 8, annual state of the tendering district statement by the leader of the council.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think you've all had a chance to see a copy of the State of Tendering Address. And as my usual position, I've tried to make it as short as I possibly could. So, with no further ado, I'll get into it. Chairman, councillors, members of the public, both here, in person and online. It is a privilege to stand before you once again to deliver the annual State of Tendering Address as a moment to reflect on how far we have come, acknowledge the challenges before us, and to set out our ambition for the future. Tendering is changing, not just in the projects we see taking shape in our towns, or the new homes rising from the ground, but in the way we govern, the way we grow, and the way we shape our communities for future generations. The last year has been one of real progress. Across our district, cranes are on the horizon, investments are turning into action, and long-discussed plans are becoming reality. This has been a year of delivery, of bricks laid, businesses supported, homes provided, and opportunities unlocked. And yet, as we look ahead, we know change is coming, not just in what we build, but in how we govern. Local government reorganisation is now firmly on the agenda. Whether we welcome it or not, we must be ready. The question is not whether change will come, but how we ensure it works for tendering. This council has always stood for its people, and that will not change. But before we look ahead to the challenges and opportunities of the future, let us take stock of what we have achieved. I'd like to start with regeneration, which is not just about investment. It is about restoring civic pride, creating places where people want to live, work and visit across tendering, and that vision is becoming reality. In Clacton, we have made real progress in delivering long-awaited transformation. Planning applications have been submitted for the redevelopment of Carnarvon House and the town's multi-storey car park. These projects will create 28 modern homes and vibrant new community spaces. At the same time, Essex County Council's plans for Clacton Library will bring state-of-the-art learning spaces, an adult community learning centre, registration services, and a base for the University of Essex Centre for Coastal Communities. Together, these projects represent £30 million of investment in Clacton's future. Meanwhile, Dovercourt is undergoing its own transformation. Planning has been submitted to modernise the Milton Road car park, creating 23 new spaces in the heart of the town centre, and we have cleared and repaired sites for the new homes in Victoria Street, demonstrating our commitment to delivery. The library redevelopment is well underway, and public realm improvements are progressing. With £9 million of investment secured, Dover's future is one of opportunity. Also in Dovercourt, the High Street Accelerator Programme investment is empowering local business. £237,000 has been secured for town centre improvements, bringing businesses together to drive change. Meanwhile, an additional £500,000 will improve open spaces, strengthen transport links between the seafront and town centre, and bring more greenery into the shopping areas. Our vision extends beyond bricks and mortar. The newly approved Community Regeneration Partnership, formerly the Levelling Up Partnership, has unlocked £20 million for Clacton and Jowick Sands. This investment will support cultural venues, revitalise public spaces and create new opportunities for businesses and residents alike. Clacton shopfronts are already benefiting from improvement grants, while Martello Tower E is set to become a new cultural and visitor hub. All of this is happening now, not years away, not aspirational plans gathering dust, but real, tangible progress, and that is something the Council can be proud of. It continues with the long-term Plan for Towns initiative, which allocates an additional £20 million for 10 years for Clacton. The Clacton Town Board, who oversees the finances and plan, has been established and is working diligently on a long-term vision for Clacton, while we await final confirmation from the government on the exact scope and funding available. The board has not been idle. Already, interim projects are making a real difference. NT shops in Clacton Town Centre have been revitalised with creative window displays, brightening up the area and fostering a renewed sense of civic pride. This is just the beginning. The board's vision includes improving safety and security, enhancing the high street and public spaces, and strengthening transport and connectivity. By focusing on these key areas, we, alongside the board, aim to create a thriving town that honours its heritage while embracing the future. Our businesses are the backbone of our economy, and we are committed to their success. The award-winning Sunspot initiative exemplifies our work in supporting small businesses. Under the Tendering for Growth banner, we delivered a 2-week business event in the autumn featuring a jobs and skills fair and expert-led sessions on tourism, culture and digital marketing. This culminated in the 3rd annual Tendering for Growth Business Awards, celebrating the achievements of our vibrant business community. Tendering for Growth is a year-round commitment. We continue to provide sector-specific support, ensuring that business in our district has the tools they need to thrive. Of course, being a coastal district, we have a rich maritime heritage, but our future does not rest solely on our past. Freeport East continues to take shape with the potential to create 13,500 jobs and drive economic transformation. One clear sign of progress is the development of Centurion Park at Horsley Cross, a new business hub that will strengthen Harwich's role as a gateway for global trade. I recently visited the site and saw firsthand the scale of what is happening. These are real opportunities, and we must ensure our residents are equipped with the skills to seize them. Growth isn't solely about jobs and investment, it is also about housing. Our local plan, the blueprint for Tendering's future, has been under review. The government's shifting policy landscape caused delays, but now we are pressing ahead, consulting with residents on the best way to accommodate between 7,000 and 8,000 new homes by 2041. The Tendering Colchester Borders Garden community remains a key part of this, and we expect to hear from the Planning Inspector, Emily, on the next steps. However, housing is more than mere numbers. It's about the people who call these houses homes. That is why I'm particularly proud of the completion of the Spendle House project in Walton on the Naze. What was once an outdated sheltered housing block has been transformed into 32 modern flats, providing safe and stable accommodation for families experiencing homelessness. The first families moved in just in time for Christmas, a powerful reminder of why we do what we do. In Lawford, the Honeycroft project has delivered 13 high-quality, energy-efficient homes designed for older residents, allowing them to remain in their community. Former tenants have returned to modern, comfortable homes, and their gratitude speaks volumes. As a result of this development and tenants resizing, 6 council properties have released back into our housing stock for allocation to those residents requiring such properties. This is what delivering for Tendering looks like. Planning for future growth will make a real difference in people's lives today. Tendering's natural beauty is one of its greatest assets, and we are determined to protect and enhance it for generations to come. Our Climate Change Action Plan, adopted this past year, is already driving real change, with new initiatives taking shape across the district. Meanwhile, we are strengthening our commitment to conservation, ensuring our historic landscapes and cherished green spaces remain places of pride and inspiration. Through our sports and activity strategy, we are encouraging residents to step outside, get active, and enjoy the stunning open spaces that make Tendering unique. Our heritage is not just something we preserve, it is something we celebrate. The iconic Dovercourt leading lights are undergoing a vital assessment funded by Historic England to secure their future. We will soon unveil the Tendering Witch Heritage Trail, an immersive journey through our district's past, bringing to life the rich and often untold stories that shape our history. This is about more than preserving the past, it's about making history a living, breathing part of our community's future. Arts and culture are the soul of our community, and nowhere is this more evident than at the Prince's Theatre. Last season's pantomime, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, didn't just entertain, it astonished, setting a new gold standard with breathtaking laser shows and immersive 3D effects. The reaction was electric, proving once again that the Prince's Theatre is a premier destination for top-tier performers. But we haven't stopped at this stage. But we haven't stopped at the stage. Behind the scenes, we've invested in our performers, ensuring they have facilities to match their talent. The theatre's changing rooms have been transformed with new makeup desks, bright modern lighting, and upgraded amenities, now standing as a testament to our commitment of excellence. And the best part, not a single penny of council tax was spent on this investment. It was fully funded through the restoration fee on tickets. With every curtain rise, the Princess Theatre strengthens our cultural landscape, enriches our community, and proves that arts in Tendring are thriving. I cannot stand here tonight without celebrating the power of our partnerships. Working together is what drives real change, and partnerships are at the heart of our success. From joining forces with the Integrated Care Board, to improving community health, and to collaborating with Essex Police to enhance safety, we are building strong, dynamic relationships that drive real results. Our work with Sport England is inspiring active lifestyles, while our strategic partnerships with businesses, education providers and cultural organisations are fuelling long-term prosperity. Tendring has a proven track record of bringing people together, unlocking opportunities and achieving more than any of us could do alone. None of the work that we do is possible without our dedicated workforce, and I extend my gratitude to our remarkable staff. Their commitment is seen in everything we do, big and small. I'll start again from the beginning. None of the work we do is possible without our dedicated workforce, and I extend my gratitude to our remarkable staff. Their commitment is seen in everything we do, big and small. As an authority, from the biggest projects I have outlined tonight to the day in, day out support they provide to residents, from cutting grass to helping housing tenants. Earlier this year, I attended our staff awards and was struck by the sheer number of long service awards showing 30 to 35 years of commitment to public service. Their dedication is the backbone of this council, and despite the uncertainty caused by future reorganisation, all our staff continue to perform and deliver to the highest standards. I want to place on record my thanks to each and every one of them. This council has always risen to the challenges before it. Now perhaps we face our biggest challenge yet in local government reorganisation. Not all of us would have chosen this path, but it is the path we are on. The question is not whether change will come, but how we will ensure Tendring emerges stronger. I am grateful for the cross-party support in the Chief Executive and I to ensure that we, as a council, are in the best possible position to make sure Tendring's voice is heard. One of the most immediate steps in this journey is our community governance review, exploring the creation of a town council for the unparished areas of Clacton, Holland-on-Sea and Jaywick Sands. This is about ensuring that local voices remain at the centre of decision making, because whatever comes next, our duty is to the people of Tendring. In summary, Chairman, Tendring has a proud history, but more importantly, it has a bright future. We have built a legacy of delivery, of strong financial management, of embracing innovation and opportunity. We have shown time and time again that we can rise to the challenges before us, and as we face the future, we do so with confidence. We will not simply be passengers in the new era of local government. We will help to shape it, because our mission remains unchanged: to deliver, to protect, and to stand, as our motto says, pro bono omnium, for the good of all. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Platt.
That's it.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to thank the leader for such a positive state on the state of Tendring. More importantly, I congratulate him, his cabinet, and his officers for having worked so hard in having progressed so many projects that our previous administration had set up and put in motion. The regeneration of the Clacton Civic Quarter will be an iconic landmark in the town, and although it took us a few attempts, we were eventually rewarded the £20 million from government. I'd like to take the opportunity here to acknowledge the involvement of the former MP, Giles Watling, who, having been a councillor here in Tendring for 8 years, fully understood the dynamics of Clacton and helped secure this funding. Also, the sterling involvement of Essex County Council in drafting that bid with us. I'm sure it would have not been a reality otherwise, and I do acknowledge the excellent way in which it's been progressed by the current administration. This can be also said for Dovercourt, where Sir Bernard Jenkins' input at the 11th hour secured the £6.5 million to help with the transformation of the town centre. Our previous administration invested heavily in purchasing the former Starling site, which had significant impact on securing this funding. This is community leadership at its very best. Again, I would like to thank the leader and all involved for having progressed to this excellent project in Dovercourt. Councillor Guglielmi, who was involved with the various problematic stages of the Sunspot from the very beginning, attended a meeting in the offices upstairs last week, and not having been invited at the opening of the building, he took this opportunity to have a look around. And he was taken back by how vibrant the place is and the fact that there is now a waiting list for the commercial units. What an excellent outcome for the people of Jaywick Sands. And as it was said at the time, this project is very complex. If it was easy, it would have been done a long time ago. Freeport East's great potential was the instrumental element that made Tungsten Properties UK invest huge sums of money in developing the Centurion Park at Horsley Cross.
Time up, Councillor Platt.
I've got 54 seconds according to this clock, Chairman.
Apologise.
It only took a mere 15 months from the beginning to the end, and as the leader has mentioned, this is a great opportunity for our district, and just the kind of commercial developments we would like to see taking place. Honeycroft project in Lawford, another great initiative from our previous administration, is a real testament of what a local authority can deliver in terms of sustainability and high quality council housing, and I'm sure it's wonderful for those happy and lucky tenants who live there. I do agree with the leader when he says this is what delivering for Tendring looks like, planning for future growth and making a real difference in people's lives today. And ever since the arrival of our Chief Executive, the strength of this council has massively prospered through our powers of partnership. Not just with the ICB, the police and several other partners, but also Essex County Council, where we look at their investments initially back to the sea defences that we discussed earlier, the roads, and of course already mentioned the civic quarter.
Right, time's up now, Councillor Platt.
Thank you, I'll
please.
just finish. I would also add our thanks to our great staff with whom none of these projects would be a reality. So, Mr Chairman, an excellent summary of the state of tendering which has been achieved in great partnerships of both this and former administrations. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson, would you like to come back?
Oh, is there no one else?
No.
Oh, Councillor Platt.
Nobody else?
Thank you, Chairman. I was possibly expecting a few more comments, but as the only person to speak, Councillor Platt, thank you very much for your kind words. And it's only right that we do acknowledge that your part in it. And I would actually say, you know, rather than us sitting there bantering about who did what and everything else, and me saying delivery is the hardest part, and you say, yeah, but we put it in place, we can both take credit for delivering a lot of these things. And it shows the power of working together for the greater good of residents. I think, Chairman, my speech has said it all, and I don't really think there's much for me to labour on. And so, Chairman, I'm happy to
Thank you,
put my
Councillor Stevenson.
statement. Thank you.
Right, noted? Yeah, okay. Item 9, petition to council report of the head of Democratic Services election. I'd like to invite Danny Mazes to speak. If you'd like to make your way down to the centre there, please. There's a small table. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairman. So, Chairman and members, thank you for inviting me this evening to speak on the petition to save citizens' advice tendering. I will not repeat my presentation to Cabinet on 17th of March, as you all have the opportunity to watch or listen to this via the Council's website. Since the launch of the petition in early 2025, development has progressed, and the Council has now made it crystal clear it is moving towards the procurement method of awarding funding for an advice service, opposed to the current subsidy scheme that obviously currently funds it. This change is not mandatory and does not need to happen by law. The Council could continue to award the subsidy scheme and retain the current budget allocation for this. However, we are where we are. What I feel is important this evening to emphasise is the risk of a gap in provision. And despite the grant extension till September the 30th, which this Council previously approved, the real risk of CA tendering closing before this date, due to legal processes such as redundancy and other processes the trustees would need to undertake, would need to be completed before the procurement stage obviously is finalised and obviously any grant is awarded. If obviously the risk of closure does happen before the realistic date of that happening, which I'm informed is roughly around July the 1st, would this council, would the leader of the council provide a formal on-the-record assurance that this real-time gap will be prevented? And if a decision on the procurement award is not reached or given by July the 1st, will the council guarantee a further extension to CA tendering to ensure a continuity of obviously the service that it provides? I think that this would reassure all parties in obviously ensuring that gap obviously is not achieved. Throughout the petition signing period, many comments were made by the people signing or supporting the cause to save citizens' advice tendering, and the following are some of those reasons. CA tendering offers a service that is free, confidential and impartial, and local people trust the brand and the people who work and volunteer for it. CA tendering offers an extensive outreach service consisting of 13 locations across the entire district, and people enjoy visiting these outreaches due to better accessibility and availability. And local people have commented that TDC services, including council tax and housing offices in Pier Avenue, frequently send people to CA tendering for support in accessing the services the council provide, and they would be scared and anxious if they were obviously to not have an advice service to obviously go and have those issues addressed. On this basis, the actions that council could reasonably agree to this evening from the options on pages 2 and 3 of the A1 report to council are: option 4, a meeting with the petitioners, with the cabinet member and or relevant senior officers. I'm going to sum up, Chairman. Option 3, taking alternative action, which could include committing alternative, secure and long-term funding, particularly during the gap. And option 2, obviously taking the action required, which would be to continue the subsidy scheme funding.
Can you wind up now,
Of course, that's
please?
not going to be realistic. Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Finally, if any council member would like to visit the CA tendering offices or any of the outreaches to see the fantastic work that obviously the team there do, I've been informed that you'd be very welcome to do that and see for yourself, obviously, the good work. Okay, thank you, members and Chairman.
If you'd like to return, can you turn your mic
Yep.
off, please? And then can you'd like to return to your seat? Thank you very much. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I thank the petitioner for bringing the petition on this very important topic. I think, as you said, that events had overtaken the petition, and as Cabinet has already recognised the potential for a gap in services, we have allocated an additional £72,000 grant to Citizens Advice Tendering, CAT, while the procurement process takes place. Advice and guidance for residents in tendering is something this council is absolutely committed to. However, the procurement process is needed to attest the value of the service for taxpayers, while also recognising that there are a number of local voluntary organisations that also provide advice to residents. This is not, as some would say, this is not, as some people would say, about tendering's taking away grant funding from Citizens Advice Tendering. Far from it. CAT are able to bid on the procurement like all other organisations, and it could be argued that having done it for so long, are best placed to make a bid. We understand the pressures that CAT is under, and we want to expedite the procurement process as efficiently as possible. We are currently out to pre-market engagement in line with the new national procurement rules that come into force this year, which will end on the 4th of April. We expect to be able to decide on a successful bidder at the start of August, with formal governance to complete after that, and time for the mobilisation of the new provider before the 1st of October, when your funding runs out. Advice and guidance is important, and as a council, we want to get it right. The process between now and the start of October will enable us to set out provision for the next 3 years through a robust value for money procurement process. And I once again thank you for your petition. Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, Chairman, there's a second piece of paper I need to read. So there is a recommendation, Chairman, that the Council notes the allocation of £72,000 to Citizens Advice Tendering to continue to contribute to the existing information and advice guidance service through direct funding for the interim period up to the 30th of September 2025 in accordance with a subsidy scheme. And having considered the petition and having reviewed the assessments and advice set out with the Head of Democratic Services and Election Report, Council believes the right approach is to test what is the best organisation to provide advice in tendering through the procurement process as we set out in January 2025 report to Cabinet. I'm happy to move that, Chairman.
Got a seconder, right, please?
Chairman, I second and reserve my right to reply later on in the debate.
Councillor Land.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we're going through some of the most challenging times, certainly known to myself, and I'm sure many of us feel the same way, whether that be financial, whether that be emotional, social. And as far as I've ever known and been talked to me about, Citizens Advice have always been a catalyst in the community towards helping those people that, let's just say, are dealing with some of those problems that I've just mentioned. I think for me personally, I think it was just the haste and the surprise of this decision as it landed probably on my phone one morning as I was waking up. A little bit of a shock, and I think that all credit must go to the service that CAB provide. I have read the petition, and I think, you know, it's fairly well worded. I think we have to be careful around some of that wording, in as much as, you know, not at all costs. We can never look at a service at all costs, but certainly there has been quite an outpouring of emotion around this decision, certainly at some of the other councils that I have the pleasure of representing and attending, and some of which have already offered to support the donations and the new charitable fundraising that's going on, and I'm pleased to see that. So it was good that we responded quickly and that a decision was made to continue funding for this interim period, leading to what we've just discussed, which is this bidding process, in which I hope a fair and sound, as Councillor Turner would say, a sound outcome is arrived at. But once again, I'd like to thank the staff at CAB for all the work that they do.
Councillor Farley.
Councillor Fairley, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just one quick question, and yeah, it's something that I'd noticed, and it was something that Mr. Maisie's raised, and it's around the timing and the redundancy process, should they need to go that route, and is there any reassurances that you can offer on the timeline that would allow them to be able to have awareness of what they need to do at the earliest possible stage, and the timeline of the decision being advised to anyone that's actually involved in partaking of the procurement process? Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Chairman. We must go through this procurement process. It must be done. However, I do hope that we don't lose sight of the marvellous work that the Citizens' Advice tendering has done and continues to do. As members, certainly the rural members will know, as councillors we get swamped with queries on subjects that we'll never know the answers to. But CAB are always far more competent to answer the questions for us. And I remember well the chief executive talking about what the local government reorganisation will be doing, saying, well, whatever happens, we must get tendering in the right frame before we become part of a unitary organisation. I just personally hope that the CAB is part of it, and hopefully that the answer will come out of the procurement process in August, I think. So don't forget the marvellous work that TAB has done up until now. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Henderson, would you like to come back?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And as Councillor Land said earlier, I think we should, and I want to associate myself with the remarks he made and pass on our thanks to everyone associated with Citizens' Advice tendering. I think we all know as councillors, all around our wards, there's various different groups who do some excellent work on supporting residents, whether it be advice or any other areas of support they can provide, especially some of the most vulnerable groups within society. And we know that goes on every day, every week of the year. I just wanted to sort of allay some of the fears here, because I'm sitting opposite Councillor Platt here at the moment, and I said this at Cabinet. Citizens' Advice tendering are not being treated any different. Like other councillors go through this process, and we just want to reassure them that this is a process that is carried out by lots of councils. I sat at the Cabinet meeting at Essex County Council, I think it was last week, when they went out for tender, and there's another group called Peabody who's covering a service called Floating Support Service, and that retenders up for a 5-year retender. They've given notice for that tender, and the new tender will come in to place, I think, next year. So those tenders are up. So I just wanted to make it clear for the benefit of the Cabinet and also the Council that this is not something against Citizens' Advice. We know you do a fantastic job. We know all of those organisations out there who are looking after our residents day in, day out are doing a fantastic job. But we do need to go through this process. We do need to make sure that the taxpayers are getting value for money, and this tender process, and hopefully the best tender will win. That's all I wanted to say, Chair, and hopefully this allays some of those fears that Citizens' Advice. And as the leaders said, there's no one better who know the district and know the concerns and know the things that people need support on most than Citizens' Advice tendering. So they're in a good position to actually bid for this tender. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, where to start? I think I'll go with Councillor Fairley first. Councillor Fairley, you talk about the timeline. The procurement takes as long as the procurement takes. It is a process that we have to follow, and at certain periods of times, in order to get providers in, we need to provide certain timelines. The anticipated outcome is that it will be the August the 1st, first week in August, not August the 1st, where we will make our decision, and in doing so would hopefully allow whoever was successful to plan their service accordingly for after the end of September. I think if Citizens' Advice are having problems, they can come and talk to the council as our current provider. Yeah, I'm not going to make promises about funding without understanding what they are, and that would be unfair to expect me to do that today. But it doesn't mean we're not open to it. We've already given another £72,000 beyond what we wanted to give, because we recognised that there was a space, a gap for the residents, and we needed to ensure that that wasn't something that they had to endure. So £72,000 has been given to cover services to the end of September. But what we are doing is we're stopping this nonsense once and for all. Every year, Citizens Advice doesn't know whether they're going to get the money or not. We're providing security for as long as we exist. And we're going to provide a 3-year contract. And what comes after that will be down to possibly some of us in a new unitary. And I was going to Councillor White, and I agree with you, Councillor White, and I agree with Councillor Henderson. Citizen Advice does do some great work, and it's nothing against them. These are government rules brought in way before I was administration. And these are the ones we have to work to. And despite people, and I say to the petitioner, you know, that the subsidy scheme does not have to be the way we go, is the way we go. His information is wrong. There is criteria that need to be met when it comes to the subsidy scheme, and we've already possibly stepped outside those bounds. And I'll lastly say to Councillor Land, this hasn't been a quick thing. When we first got in, I recognised the problem that Citizen Advice had at the time. But we were new in, so we gave them the £144,000 and said, we may be doing something with this later. But we weren't official enough. So we gave them another £144,000 and told them this will be happening, that we need to go through that. And we built our subsidy scheme around that as a system to deliver that money to them at the time. But it cannot continue. And so, bridging the gap with another £72,000, it is our hope that our procurement will be sorted and done in time to make sure that whoever's the right provider will be able to deliver our services as we see fit. Thank you.
Yeah, all those in favour of this motion? Any abstain? That was carried. Thank you. Right, item 10 on the agenda, question and pursuit to Council Procedure Rule 10.1. There are none. Item 11, urgent Cabinet and Portfolio Holder decisions. There are none. Item 12, minutes of the committees, pages 21 to 98. Councillor Stevenson.
Chairman, I'm happy to move these en bloc.
Yeah. All those in favour? That's carried. I've done that. Oh dear. Item 13 is a motion to the Council pursuant of Council Procedure 12, Planning Consents and Renewable Energy Stipulations, pages 99 to 102. Councillor Ben Sillam, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I have pleasure in formally moving this motion, which reads as follows. That Tendring District Council believes that, in principle, any development in the district of Tendring should only be granted planning consent if suitable renewable energy is installed at the time of development. This is to include options such as solar, heating, and other measures, and such that developers will no longer
be able to place restricted covenants to prevent purchasers from installing these measures when they are required, with a possible exemption for very small developments. And furthermore, that any developers who currently hold restrictive covenants preventing homeowners from the installation of renewable energy, such as solar, should be encouraged by the Council in the strongest possible terms to remove these covenants, to remove these restrictions where appropriate, and allow property owners to install solar panels and other green measures without hindrance. B, that Tendring District Council therefore notes that there are numerous developments spread right across the district where developers, by way of restricted covenants, are preventing residents who have purchased a property from installing solar energy or similar green energy measures. That the Council already has a policy in Section 2 of its adopted local plan, PPL 10, Renewable Energy Generation and Energy Efficiency Measures, which amongst other things states, all development proposals should demonstrate how renewable energy solutions appropriate to the building site and locations have been included in the scheme, and for new buildings be designed to facilitate the retrofitting of renewable energy installations. For residential development proposals involving the creation of one or more dwellings, the Council will expect detailed planning applications to be accompanied by renewable energy generation plan, setting out the measures that will be incorporated into the design, layout and construction aimed at maximising energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy. Planning permission will only be granted where the application can demonstrate that all reasonable renewable energy and energy efficiency measures have been fully considered and, where viable and appropriate, incorporated into the design, layout and construction. The Council will consider the use of planning conditions to ensure the measures are delivered. Furthermore, that the supporting text within the local plan, paragraph 7.9.3, I'm sure we all know that off by heart, states in respect of the renewable energy generation plan that it must demonstrate how different measures have been considered and incorporated, which could and should include the following: triple glazing, solar roof panels, solar tiles, air source heating systems, ground source heating systems, rainwater capture system, I forgot some super insulation of course, electric vehicle rapid charging points, super fast broadband, and a flexible space within each home to enable home working and a reduction therefore of the need to travel. Mechanical heat recovery ventilation, solar thermal systems, solar battery storage systems, and where appropriate, any other newer or alternative technologies, and measures aimed at maximising energy efficiency and the use of renewable energy. That paragraph 7.9.4 of the supporting text then states, the Council is particularly supportive of the use of solar panels and will expect them to be incorporated into new development wherever possible and practicable. That through the review of the local plan, to be overseen by the Planning, Policy and Local Plan Committee, of course. The Council will be revisiting policy PPL 10 with the view to incorporating a new version that aligns with the substantial work carried out by Essex County Council and which is designed to strengthen Council's ability to achieve high levels of energy efficiency and renewable energy provision, with the aim of achieving net zero carbon, and which will be taken into account alongside the substantial changes coming through the amended Buildings Regulations in April 2025, which will mandate new development having to meet much higher levels of insulation, energy efficiency and net zero capability. That if a development has already been granted planning permission with certain measures required, for example by planning condition, but those measures are not delivered, the Council can consider enforcement action to ensure compliance, and that a developer could not legitimately or sensibly prevent those measures from happening through the use of a covenant. And that, however, if a development is not required under its planning permission to do certain things, for example the installation of solar panels, the Council cannot stop a developer applying a covenant to a property to restrict the retrofitting of such things, as it would be a private matter between the developer and the buyer of the property. Point C, that Tendring District Council, having duly noted the above, requests the Leader of the Council, the Portfolio Holder for Housing and Planning, to encourage developers on behalf of this Council to cease using restrictive covenants in the future, and to further encourage that any developers who already hold restrictive covenants preventing homeowners from the installation of renewable energy measures, such as solar, to remove those restrictions where appropriate, and to allow property owners to install solar panels and other green energy measures without hindrance. Thank you, Chair.
Have we got a seconder?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd very much like to second that, but reserve my right to speak later in the debate.
Chairman, if I can just remind members, so once the motion has been moved and seconded, it is then for the mover just to explain his motion and then be asked for people who indicate they wish to speak. It was only Councillor Bensalem reading his motion, it wasn't the explanation to it.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite simple. We have numerous developments spread right across Tendring, probably in most members' wards, where residents are literally prevented from their right, their choice, to install solar panels or other green measures on their buildings. And having received numerous complaints and questions from residents of Tendring as to why they are prevented from doing such on their own properties that they've purchased, I thought it was right to bring it before everyone here to discuss, debate and consider, and hopefully you'll support the motion.
Thank you.
Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman, and I thank the motion putter for a long and detailed motion there. I think we've got the detail okay. I would, however, like to make an amendment, Chairman. I'd like to add a part D that will read that this council requests the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee investigate investigate the matters raised in this motion as part of the review of the local plan. And I'm happy to explain in a moment, but that's the motion I'll put forward. Amendment even, yeah.
Have we got a seconder?
I'm happy to second that, and I reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, if I may, Chairman. Before you go to asking Councillor Bray to explain his amendment, the first question is would the mover and seconder accept that as an amendment? If not, then you go to Councillor Bray, and then it will be the amendment will be debated. There will then be a vote on the amendment. If the amendment is carried, then that becomes a substantive motion. If that amendment falls, then you revert back to the motion from the original. Thank you. So it's Councillor Ben-Sillam's.
Yeah.
Councillor Bray, yes, happy to accept that amendment. It seems logical.
In which case, that now becomes your substantive motion, which is everything that Councillor Ben-Sillam read out, and in addition, the paragraph which you have just read out, Councillor Bray. Thank you. Just double check the second is happy. And sorry, should have clarified, is the second happily also on that? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Go back to, so now it's open. You've got Councillor Bray who wants to.
Yeah, Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. That's all nice and clear, I think. Thank you, Chairman. The reason I've amended the motion is because of the complexities within it. Whilst it is very long, detailed and quite virtuous, there are situations where you put through a motion and we have to accept that actions have consequences. I'm sure we're all aware of that. It's notable here that the suggestions made could, and we're not talking about primary legislation here, but they could have massive implications on the cost of house building. Now, those of us who've been on the planning committee many times have experienced occasions where developers have come forward and told us that they cannot provide social housing for us because it is not viable to do so. It is reasonable, I think, and we would all accept that developers don't build houses if they don't make any profit. Strangely, they don't queue up to do that. If the profit margin is below a certain level, they can use a viability option to say, we can't give you any social housing. We can't give you an open space contribution because there isn't enough profit in the deal to do that. So one or two of the items within here could increase housing to the cost of building a house to such an extent that it may well cause viability issues. And it's interesting, and I do have a small quote here, which I will need my glasses for. This is from Mr Pennycook, who is a Government Minister for Housing and Local Authority, who, on a similar motion, which came before Parliament some time ago, said that our concern is that passing primary legislation that doesn't strike that balance correctly could have a number of adverse effects, including on housing supply, the construction industry and local authorities. Now, as I said, we're not talking about primary legislation, but we are asking the Leader of the Council and the portfolio holder to go and encourage people to do things. I think it's logical that we should look to our local plan committee so that they fully and clearly investigate through our officers and understand what it is they're recommending people to do and what the potential outcome of that could be. What we don't want is a situation where developers find that they cannot build a development because it's too costly when we need that development, particularly when we have a government who is seeking 1.5 million new houses. So there's a conflict there. I think the smart thing to do, and I think you've already agreed with me, is to send it to the local plan committee, let the people who know what they're doing, because I suspect not many of us in here are experts in building or building engineering. I'm certainly not. So we should probably let our experts have a look at it, have a look at the potential and what the impact of the suggestions would be. And I've got 15 seconds left, as promised, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Councillor Fairley.
Thank you. I'm really concerned about this motion. It seems to look very much at one technical aspect of design amongst many relating to energy efficiencies, and as such, surely those are fully covered by highly complicated and in-depth building regulations which developers are obliged to meet. The matter of energy reduction targets are covered in Part L of the building regulations available on the government website with their publications, and I understand the last change to Part L was introduced in 2021, which introduced a 31% betterment over the 2013 standards. And the next change to Part L is called the Future Homes Standard and will be introduced later this year. This will come with a 6 to 12 month transition period, the current standard assessment procedure software to be replaced by the home energy model within this next change. Led by successive governments, the introduction of the Future Home Standard will in effect make all dwellings zero carbon ready for regulated energy and then fully zero carbon once the national energy grid has been decarbonised. The Future Homes Hub and Future Homes Task Force have done a lot of work on this and created a timetable for the delivery of these future homes, and there are some interesting slides available relating to the work. They cover targets for zero carbon ready homes, amongst others, for water efficiency, biodiversity, sustainable living, resource efficiency, air pollution, and zero embodied carbon. And I'm sure our Director of Planning would be happy to offer a member briefing on what that means for building control at a local level. And based on these changes coming forward, I feel that the points within the motion cross over a little bit, and their technical aspects, and what we're trying to suggest within the motion is too prescriptive and creates an unnecessary level of work for our officers. We all want new developments in tendering to meet the highest standards in terms of quality, but also in offering our residents beautiful places to live, places which age well and remain aspirational to house movers. Developers put covenants on new homes for a variety of reasons. They preempt problems arising. They're useful for our residents as they help protect the integrity of a whole development. They can prevent antisocial behaviour, nuisance and annoyance, as well as reducing risk of individual and whole development property prices being devalued by a problem. They may restrict commercial parking, for example, advertising front garden structures such as play frames or frontage landscaping, amongst other matters, and they may include restrictions on external PV panels in some cases, especially if the aspect of a property on a development is in view, and the possibility of a variety of different PV panels across neighbouring properties, which may impact the look of the development as a whole. And I think that's important. Covenants are included.
Can you wind up, please?
I'll just finish. Covenants are included in the legal documentation for all house buyers, so anyone is fully informed prior to making any purchase decision. They preserve the harmony and beauty of a development for everyone living there, or for those looking to purchase a property in the future. Overall, I think PV panels are just one aspect within a host of technical design options which can help achieve zero carbon ready energy efficient builds, and it is through the planning policy and local plan committee that the best recommendations for any policy changes can be considered and made. Thank you.
Councillor Mark Cousins.
Right, thank you, Chairman. I wish to speak in general terms because whilst climate change is a worthy subject, the planning system is not here to protect one personal interest against another personal interest. And I think nor is it here to further one political view against another. So I'm trying to be non-political, and I will be voting against this. I think the amendment plays with it and makes it slightly better. But our existing local plan has gone through a long process, challenged at every stage before being adopted, which gives it its weight and power to deliver for tendering using all of its policies, not just one single policy. You need to look at it as a whole document. And I believe this is the wrong forum to attempt to readdress the planning balance, which may bring unintended consequences. We are now in the process of reviewing our local plan, and any suggestions for changes or reinforcing any policies should enter this process. Planning decisions are the result of very careful consideration by our professional planning officers. The weighting and the consideration of policies that have undergone thorough examination and consultation result in safe decisions that our council can defend at appeal. If we wish to strengthen this particular policy, let's do it through the local plan process. Officers and members cannot be put into this kind of position to take a fixed position which can only bring the council into disrepute. So let's leave it to the proper consultation through the local plan process, which is actually underway at the moment. So if you've got any comments to make about any policies, that should be going into that process, not being brought to this forum to debate, bits and pieces.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, here's the first. I never ever thought I'd stand up and say that I agree with a Labour government minister. But the Sunshine Bill was put before the government in January by a Liberal Democrat MP. And Mr Pennycook, as Councillor Bray has already said, has actually basically refused that and said that there would be a number of adverse effects, including the housing supply. Considering the government's policy is to produce 1.5 million homes, anything that potentially could slow that down will be looked on not very favourably by the government. I agree with some of the comments that have been made. I mean, I don't know how many engineers that we have here that are able to comment. I'm not an engineer, I'm a vehicle engineer, but I'm not a building engineer. We have official officers who could do that. But I did speak to an engineer. And looking at some of these items here, triple glazing. Well, there are double glazing units would actually outperform triple glazing. Then we look at the ground source heating systems. We're looking at £5,000 to £6,000 for an air source, but £10,000 to £12,000 for ground source. The costs just keep going. Electric vehicle rapid charging points goes from £600 to nearly £2,000. And then what happens if technology changes and actually we find ourselves moving towards hydrogen vehicles in the future? I could go on and talk this. I spent 2 hours with the engineer going through this in detail. And this is such a massive change in what's being proposed here that will have massive implications across the district, that we just can't make a decision here. Councillor Bray putting it through to the local plan committee, at least we can then have the time to investigate this properly. But just in terms of costs, the cost of all of this, if it was all put on a house, you could be looking at an extra £60,000 in costs on top of a house build. Enormous. That would definitely put some people off. But there are many documents that the government have released, and I've got many of them here, and I haven't got time to go through them now. But the thing that I did strike a chord with, which is the government, or the future home standard, a government policy with the aim of encouraging more energy efficiency and carbon reduction, is going to be published in May. So we haven't got long to wait to hear from the government itself.
Time up.
Thank you very much. That's me done. Thank you.
Councillor Everett.
Thank you, Chairman. Some time ago, I used to go around the country speaking on intelligent buildings for the Chartered Institute of Building Services Engineers. And I note that in the list on paragraph 3, that building intelligence isn't included in that list. And I would exhort you that perhaps it should be, because it can make a big difference to how efficient the outcome of what you are trying to do can become. But the other thing that came out of the experience of working with CIBSE and on their Intelligent Buildings group was that one of the things that we looked at all of the time was the whole life cost of buildings. Not just the cost of when you build them, but their cost over their lifetime, so that it works out in very simplistic terms. You spend more at the beginning, it becomes cheaper to run, and vice versa. And there needs to be perhaps a recognition of that whole life cost of buildings in any discussions that go ahead. And that's one of the reasons why I support the idea that this actually needs to go to the Local Plan and Policy Committee, because I do think it needs to be looked at in detail. I accept that this is a very detailed motion, however, it really only scratches the surface of the complex issues behind it. So I would exhort you, send this to the Local Plan and Policy Committee and investigate it pretty thoroughly. Thank you.
Councillor Bush.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, well, the words by the various councillors speaking on this, I wholly agree. I struggled going through it to try to decipher the how I could look at this for amendments and what the real method or messages was in here. Particularly, it was all focused on solar panels and putting individuals' issues wanting to sort of install it and having covenants. There's lots of things. I've spoke to solicitors on this, and I've been involved with some solar schemes. And it comes with lots of complexity. It can be structural issues that's on existing properties. It can be aesthetics. It could be simply the economics don't work. And then there's schemes out there that are rent-a-roof schemes. And some of them are scams, where people are just selling roofs and energy to people, and they will get a cutback, and the installer will take a 25-year cost. So that is, but we're looking at specifics here. I was privileged to sit on the local plan, and I was influencing a lot that went on in SP10 from the background that I come from. And things have moved on since that was there. And I think, as Councillor Zoe said earlier, there's a lot of transition that is going on. Things like what we're all aware of, SAP, is going to be turned into HEM, and that makes it look a thorough modelling of a house. And what we look at here, we can have a drop-down list that we would like a solar thermal heat pump, or we would like a PV charger. What needs to be looked at, and which is this new document under AGM being released in April, and it is a comprehensive document policy from the government. It looks at everything as first fabric. What's the point in putting more energy into buildings with equipment when through its design first principles, the materials used and actually changing orientation and aspects, improving shading, using natural light, it will reduce the need for many of these products. So the thing with the new legislation which is coming and the modelling, which I'm sure our officers will know inside out once it's there, and we can debate that at local planning policy meetings. It's a great opportunity. I always welcome improving our policies across everything we do in our portfolio of housing. But this has got too many vagaries in it. I spoke to some of my colleagues earlier. For me, looking at removing restrictive covenants, it can open to lots of can of worms, and we could be facing all sorts of issues legally, and so will the client or the resident. So I'm only echoing what's already been said by others, and say that its best place is the local plan, working with the officers. We're going through a review of the local plan now. We could be really leading the way, as Councillor Stevens said earlier. We want to be innovative. We want to be making sure it's the regulations, and in fact, we are leading really good examples of build quality. But they have to be economic, they have to be viable, and that's already been said by so many of us here tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Barrett, would you got your right to reply?
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, in the past, when we've spoken about the environment and indeed the damage to it, we may have spoken the language of what might happen, what could happen. Well, today we are living what is happening and we are watching what is happening. Whether that's the flash floods in Spain, the fires in California, the warmest winters in the UK on record, or those photographs of polar bears on ever-receding glaciers. The question is, are we taking that threat seriously? And I have to say, by some of the comments tonight, the answer is no. Has this issue gone down on our priority list due to the other crises in the world? And of course, we live in a world now where drill, baby, drill is now a viable policy. And there is a real possibility that the world are ignoring these dangers. And of course, councillors, it won't be us that faces the worst of them. It will be the young people that follow us. We can't affect the world, but we can influence our part of the world. As Tendring District Councillors, we can make a difference in this area. And this motion allows us to do that tonight. How can it be right that you are a property owner and cannot put a solar panel on the top of your house because of a covenant? How can it be right that as a developer, you choose not to put solar panels on your development because of aesthetic reasons, not cost? This, in many reasons, is not about cost. The barriers, the time for putting barriers in front of protecting this planet are gone. We are now drinking at the last chance saloon. And it's a much bigger problem than members opposite appear to see about worrying about the finances of property developers, although their concerns and compassion for that group of people are duly noted. At the heart of this motion tonight is about the protection of the environment, and it's about a freedom of choice for people. Tonight, by supporting this motion, we can do our bit to make a difference, to make a change, to help the environment, to remove those barriers, those nonsensical barriers, and change our bit of the world. Please support this motion tonight.
Yeah. Councillor Bensalem.
Thank you, Chair. There were lots of points raised there, and I understand the points raised. Broadly speaking, they were all around the same area, and I accept that. And we've already agreed to the Amendment D, which I think will cover each and every issue that was raised. So on that, I'd like to commend this motion and ask colleagues in the room to please support.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. And can I just thank Councillor Bensalem for bringing this motion forward, because I didn't know that covenants were a thing around these such developments. And it's interesting to find out these restrictions are, in effect, a choice for most people, but not for some. And I also thank Councillor Bray for his amendment, although I think Councillor Bensalem was shrewd enough to note that he'd already picked it up in number 5, where it says that through the review of the local plan to be overseen by the Planning Policy and Local Plan Committee, the Council will revisit policy PPL 10. So I think we already had that covered, but I think it strengthens the motion. But I think it's also about what we're trying to do. C says, and that this is why I don't feel it's contentious, that Tendring District Council have duly noted the above, doesn't ask us to make it happen, and requests the leader of the council and the portfolio holder for housing planning to encourage developers, not force them, on behalf of this council to cease using such restrictive covenants in the future, and to further encourage that any developers who already hold restrictive covenants, preventing homeowners from the installation of renewable energy measures, such as solar, to remove these restrictions. There's nothing about forcing people here or anything else. Nobody's got to do it. Well, the thing that really boils down to, for me, this is about choice. If I want to put solar panels on my house, I can. I haven't got a covenant on mine, you know. And perhaps if I hadn't read the fine print and there was a covenant hidden there, maybe that's on me. But there is a growing need for energy. You know, it's cataclysmic, and we're seeing the outcomes of that with pylons driven through our districts. And I think if we can be sustainable, if we can generate that that energy at home, then we don't need big pylons pushing through our districts. And that energy can be used at source. So, Chairman, I will be supporting this motion with the amendment, and I encourage everybody else to do so. Thank you.
Right, we go to vote. All those for? Any against? That is carried out. Any abstentions? That is carried. Item 14, reference from Cabinet, adoption of the procurement strategy, pages 103 to 182. Sir Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll make this one brief. The adoption of our procurement strategy is about many things already in the report, if it's fair to say. And I think I'd just rather quite easily go to the recommendation. I think many people have already heard and seen this quite a few times. And this is about ratifying all those decisions in the past. So I'm quite happy to move the recommendation, Chairman. Thank you.
Have we got a seconder for that? Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. And following Cabinet's approval for the procurement strategy for the Essex Procurement Partnership, we ask full Council to adopt this strategy as part of the Council's policy framework in readiness for the new Procurement Act 2023 and the National Procurement Policy Statement, which both came into effect on Monday the 24th of February this year. The collaborative partnership initially began between Tendring District Council and Essex County Council for the delivery of procurement functions back in October 2021. In March 2023, Cabinet approved this council forming part of a wider partnership of councils to explore a shared service for parts of Essex, now known as the Essex Procurement Partnership. Through this development period, as portfolio holder responsible for procurement, I've represented the council at the member advisory group with members from each local authority. We provide executive member oversight of the partnership, reviewing performance in delivering against its objectives and acting as both critical friends and champions of the approach. To date, the focus has been on ensuring we can all sign up to the new service commencing in April this year. A lot has already been achieved and a number of specific activities have already been jointly delivered, such as ensuring the Council's practices are up to date with legislation, national policy and guidance and best practice, developing and delivering training both on the existing regime and ensuring readiness for the implementation of the new Act, seeking compliance with the regulatory framework and raising matters of probity and non-compliance with senior managers, management team and an internal audit where necessary, incorporating social value opportunities through the production of a social value policy for procurement purposes, which was adopted in November 2024. Developed a revised procurement strategy to be used across the councils to enable wider collaboration approaches as the attached strategy explains. A review of the current procurement procedure rules is currently in progress. Contract management principles have been developed, but there is a need for training and awareness. The collaboration is through a shared procurement team and pooling resources. The agreement is proposed for a 3-year period, which aligns with the local government reorganisation programme, albeit the agreement provides flexibility for reviews to be undertaken and adjusted accordingly. The report provides high-level information on the objectives of the new Act and the government's new procurement policy, which aims to transform public sector procurement, driving innovation, delivering better outcomes and embedding transparency at each point of the procurement pathway. Crucially, it will let everybody access procurement data and understand how public money has been spent. The new Act brings in considerable flexibility, but this requires planning and defining the route has to be taken ahead of procurement. As with all collaborations and shared services, formal planning of projects is essential to ensure the Council's priorities and business as usual can be delivered in a timely manner with sufficient resources being allocated. The development of partnerships and collaborations like this are no mean task, and I invite members of the Council to place on record our thanks to, I'll finish on this sentence, Chair, to place on record our thanks to Lisa Hastings, who has been a central player in the delivery of these pieces of work. I also invite Council to approve and adopt the procurement strategy as set out in Appendix 1 to this report.
Councillor Fairley.
Thank you. Councillor Guglielmi would have liked to have been here this evening, and I'd like to give him a mention as this scheme was being developed under his watch and was part of his portfolio responsibilities at that time. The initial partnership with Essex County Council that is still in place until the end of this month came out when it became apparent that recruiting procurement officers was extremely challenging, and the service level agreement with Essex meant that Tendring District Council would get great benefits by tapping into that huge wealth of expertise within Essex County Council's procurement framework. And of course, as expected, it served tendering extremely well. This council did in fact try to recruit a procurement manager, and Councillor Guglielmi was part of the panel who thought they had appointed someone well qualified and very experienced, but it never materialised because soon after the appointment this candidate asked for a much bigger pay grade than had originally been offered, so every effort was actually made. The new Procurement Act 2023 came into force on the 24th of February 2025, introduced new legal requirements for the Council to observe, such as the information sharing duty, the best value duty, deliver value for money, maximise public benefit, and act with integrity throughout the procurement process. But Section 12, in brackets 4, also requires that the Council, as the contracting authority, has to have regard to the difficulties faced by small and medium-sized enterprises who wish to partake in public procurements and consider whether these can be mitigated. Could the Cabinet member tell us how this will be demonstrated, please? Would he also be able to explain the reasons for the difference in partnership contributions set out on page 127 of the agenda? And who will chair the member advisory group? Schedule 5 states that the chair will be chosen by the member advisory group, but it doesn't set out how that will be decided. And it will be extremely helpful to also understand what reporting mechanism from the EPP there will be to members. It's been mentioned that the aim for the length of this partnership is for the next 3 years, but how will this be weaved into LGR? At a recent meeting of Essex County Council's corporate scrutiny committees, where the whole session was dedicated entirely to procurement, there was a general assent that the strengths of this partnership need to be carried through to the next governance model of however many unitaries will replace the current 15 local authorities. And I'd very much like to understand the Cabinet members' views on this. Thank you.
I'd like to go to the Chief Exec.
I mean, if I can just remind members, it's not a question time for this. It is a debate when you have motions in front of you. So I know that Councillor Fair has asked questions and may answer or may answer in writing, but it is not a question time. It is a debate which you have when motions are before you. Thank you.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And my question is... well, this procurement strategy delivered from the Labour administration opposite is actually a good idea. It will produce efficiency savings. It's group buying, and in my business, I link up with various other like-minded businesses, and we do exactly the same. Buying will produce better figures and cost savings for residents, for sure. So I will be supporting it. As Councillor Fairley has already mentioned, SMEs, small business, are vital to this, and this is something that I mentioned when I attended full Cabinet meeting on this subject, is that I would like to see somewhere, priority given or weighting given to local businesses. Businesses in tendering that are going to be suffering as a result of recent changes in government policy, which means that they will be cutting jobs and they are struggling. National insurance, minimum wage, and I do think that every single bit of help that we can give them, we should support them. So, yeah, my message is really, please support local business because they need help more than ever now. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate Carlo's comments, and perhaps he would have worded them differently had he been here in person. But I think, if you wouldn't mind, Councillor Fairley, if you would give us that and we'll get to real answers, although that's not going to be something that we're going to set a precedent on. Chairman, I'm happy with what's been planned here. I think there's a lot of things in there, including our social value. And when Councillor Harris talks about how we look after our own businesses, social value is one of those ways we do that. We ask on a lot of our contracts, and Essex has subscribed to it, that our social value policy is part of our procurement. And so I think we already addressed that. And I think that's it, Chairman. I think we're good to go. Thank you very much.
Right, all those in favour? Any one again. Any abstentions? That's carried. Item 15, joint report of monitoring officer and the Cabinet, amendments of tendering district council members planning code protocol following reviews 183 to 204. Councillor Stevenson.
Chairman, it's getting late. Chairman, this report is for Council to consider the proposed amendments to the members' planning code and protocol following a review by the Standards Committee, which has been considered by the Cabinet. A consultation has taken place with members of the Planning Committee, planning officers and the independent persons, together with a portfolio holder responsible for the housing and planning. I would like to thank the Standards Committee for their consideration of this, and the recommendations to Council are a reflection of the work that has been put in. I do not intend to go through the amendments proposed, but some of the themes identified, as outlined in the report, where the concept of bias needs to be stronger. There will be stronger links to the Members' Code of Conduct, declarations of interest and participation at meetings, the importance of seeking any advice earlier, the importance of member training needs to be stressed, as well as stronger details required around planning committee members attending public meetings with applicants and developers and objectors, as well as the site visit sections needed to be stronger. Chairman, the planning code and the protocol aims to ensure that in the planning process there are no grounds for suggesting that a decision is biased, is not impartial, or not well-founded in any way. I think it is agreed by all members that planning legislation and guidance can be complex and changes quite frequently, and therefore it is vital that we, as a council, have this code and protocol to guide all members. That is why our constitution requires any member who is sitting on the planning committee to have mandatory training with regards to the determination of planning applications, and the final recommendations of the council is that training on the planning probity protocol forms part of that mandatory training. Chairman, I move the recommendations as written on page 184.
Have we got a second?
Chairman, happy to second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Bray.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sure no one's surprised to see me stand. First of all, my congratulations to the Standards Committee for bringing forward a very good report, which it is, and highlights a number of things. I think we sometimes get a bit carried away, and we sort of expect our planning councillors, our planning committee councillors, to be expert builders, expert inspectors, and they're not. The whole purpose of the planning committee is that the committee should be made up of lay members, in exactly the same way as you would see in a magistrate's court, for example. Exactly the same. Magistrates have no legal qualifications. We don't have any building qualifications. We don't, and that's as it should be. So the training does need to be good, but it needs to recognise the fact that it is a quasi-judicial committee, and the decisions made by that committee are made by the members. And that leads me on to something that's long been a bone of contention, and I will bring it up. It states here in 2.3 that planning officers will provide professional advice. Good, I'm ever so pleased about that, and they generally do. And must provide planning committee members with an officer recommendation. Now, let's be clear, there's no legal requirement for that, and many councillors don't. And it does concern me when we're talking about bias and predetermination, that when we have a committee of lay members who receive a recommendation from an officer, that, to me, feels potentially predeterminate. Effectively, an officer is telling the cabinet, or sorry, telling the committee which way they should vote. Now, I know they're not, and I fully appreciate that, but a new member on a committee could feel that way. And I think it's unfair to say they couldn't. So that one has always concerned me. It is absolutely the case that it is the members of the planning committee who have to make the decision, and officers advise well. I also want to pick up very, very quickly on the way that people behave. I note that it's been picked up during this. I think it's absolutely correct. There is never any reason for anybody to be disrespectful on either side, and I congratulate the people who picked that up and have brought it in and said that both councillors and officers should always act in a respectful manner. And absolutely, we need to be able to be asked robust questions and ensure we find out every detail we can to make the right decision, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Griffith.
Chairman, first of all, I'd like to thank the Standards Committee for what's in general an excellent report. The only sort of minor concerns that I have are really revolving around section 10, which is the post-submission discussions, which are on page 200. In particular, 10.1 that says members should not encourage appealing JR, which I take to mean judicial review, or complaint against the council without speaking to the council officer first. In my view, the process of judicial review and appeals should be separated from complaints, because I believe that, especially when you're looking at complaints in regard to some, shall we say, general housing applications or development, that could actually be sorted out by asking a senior officer to review the case and talk to the resident in general. That should, or at least in my experience, resolve a majority of problems. So I'd like to see, if possible, consideration given to separating those issues, because I think that when we're looking at post-submission discussions, that would be helpful to all concerned. The other thing is this issue about 10.3. Members should not visit the site within a week of the decision to ensure no perception of bias. This would avoid heightened tensions with the applications and neighbourhood not pleased with the decision. Now, I have to say there are some practical problems with this. For example, if somebody is considering a town centre development, does that mean that you don't actually shop in your own town centre and have to look for somewhere else? I think that, let's be honest, common sense should be allowed here, and that members that are sitting on the planning committee really should know whether or not it's wise for them to visit a street or an area. I do think that if you're the ward councillor, not being able to visit a part of your ward for a week because somebody's had their extension refused may not be necessarily good for either local democracy or planning. So again, I would urge that consideration be looked at that, because I really don't think that when we're dealing with adults on a planning committee that make decisions, that we really need to have things like that in there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Baker, reserved to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. It'd be remiss of me if I didn't. With regard to Councillor Bray's comments about professional advice, I disagree with your comments that you've made previously. We're going to have this discussion, no doubt, on many occasions about don't put a recommendation forward. I think if you've got members on the committee who have not sat on the committee, regardless of if they've had the initial training, they need some sort of guidance. Now, sometimes it's a very, very fine balancing act, as we've seen in the past. Very fine, and an officer could say, this could go either way, but in my professional opinion, this is what I propose and this is what is in front of you. Sometimes we've disagreed with that. That's fine, provided we can put good reasons as to why it's not, bearing in mind that, you know, developers do appeal when we say no. With regard to Councillor Griffiths' comments, minor concerns with 10.1. I'm not 100% sure what you mean by that, but maybe that's a conversation that we can have another time. 10.3, having read this document more than once, you sometimes get word blind. And I must admit, 10.3 could be worded slightly differently, I think. But the rest of it, I think, is fine, Chairman. I think it sets out what we can, can't, should, shouldn't do. Also, with regard to site visits, it specifically says, as far as I can recall, and can't find the relevant paragraph, is that members of the public don't speak to the planning committee. Their place to speak is there. Well, not necessarily in here, but at the table in the evening. And with regard to site visits, it also just reinforces that councillors must stick together and all the other bits and pieces. I think it's a good document, Chairman, and I think we should agree it. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I'll just go straight to comments from other people. So, Councillor Bray, at the Cabinet, you also said you're not an expert. You said it tonight, and yet recommendations from our expert officers shouldn't be included either. And it made me think, you know, if I had a gas engineer come round, I'm not a gas engineer, by the way, and he said, this is what I would do, I would go, no, don't tell me, let me guess. You know, let me work it out for myself. Same with the gardener, when the gardener turned up and said, you know, I think you should cut the bush back now. I'm like, no, let me work it out for myself, you know, then I'll tell you what I want you to do. So I think you're wrong, and in a big way. But you're not only wrong because it wasn't raised by the planning committee as a problem. And I think Councillor Griffiths, like Councillor Baker, you raised some interesting points. And I don't want to delay this document any further. So I'll offer a branch. I'll pick it up on our next Constitutional Working Party. You know, we'll bring it forward. Yeah, a lot of it says should. And as you say, common sense should be applied in that. So, Chairman, I'm happy to move this. And those are my comments. Thank you.
We go to the vote. All those in favour? We've got to count these, I think. Need to count them. Of course I do, yeah. Those against? Abstention. Right, that is carried. Item 15, joint report with the monitoring officer and the cabinet. 16. 15, isn't it? Oh. We've done 14. Right. Oh, well. Do it twice. No. Item 16, joint report of the monitoring officer and the cabinet and review of the Constitution, pages 205 to 250. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that's a recognition of how late it's getting. I won't labour this one too much. This is the annual review of the Constitution. We had planned to do a full deep dive in-depth review of the Constitution to bring out a new shining version of it. That was before LGR, and it seems now that would be a waste of our effort and time when we have so much else to do. So we quickly did the recommendations in front of you and worked through it. And I would like to thank all of the panel, my working party, who, as usual, stated this won't take long, and it did. So I'm very grateful for all their submissions. We had a good conversation around every recommendation in there. And so, Chairman, I'm happy to move the recommendations on page one. No, I don't know. I've lost the page number. I'm happy to move the recommendations, Chairman.
Have we a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. And in standing to second this, I'll just say briefly that there was general consensus around the room for the recommendations within this report, and I'm happy to second it on that basis.
Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, I can't begin to tell you how disappointed I am with the decision not to include the item which I spoke about a year ago today, and it was going to come before this council, but then we decided that it's best going to the Constitutional Working Party. And it's the decision not to allow members the chance to call in trees with TPOs that are threatened, and that they are, that when the application goes in to remove a TPO. We've spoken about net zero tonight. We've spoken about the environment. The best machine that nature knows in terms of reducing carbon are trees. How I came involved in this is that we had a 250-year-old plus tree in our village in Tendring that was threatened. An application had gone in from an insurance company who wanted to save money in the method of repair on a house that was built just 35 years before, in terms of reducing the subsidence. And what they believed is, oh, we must cut the tree down. They made an application to officers. The parish council and residents were outraged, along with myself. And the recommendation from the tree officer in TDC was going to allow the TPO to be removed because of the threat of potential costs, where the insurance company could come after TDC if those costs, if they incurred those costs, in terms of resolving the issue. I spoke with the insurance company. We campaigned. I also spoke to the monitoring officer and the director of planning, and said to them, although I can't call it then, you know, I urge and plead with you to bring it before the planning committee because it's of such importance, and they agreed to do so on my behalf. And this motion was also seconded by Councillor Alexander at the time. So it came before the planning committee. The planning committee then discussed this. They asked for more information, more lobbying, more pressure from myself and residents, and lo and behold, the insurance company withdrew their application to cut the tree down and agreed to carry out a thorough and proper repair on behalf of their customer. And guess what? The house is saved, it hasn't got subsidence, and there's no problem. And Tendring and our village still has a 250-year-old tree. The amount of applications that go before this, or that are applied to remove TPOs, is 7 on average a year. And of those, you might get 1 or 2 that members want to carry in. This is not a matter of time-consuming matters for the planning department or the planning committee.
Time's up.
Please
finish.
Yeah, I'm nearly finished. And this is a matter that I felt has let down residents, and is, you know, to be honest, I think the members should hang their heads in shame on this. Thank you.
Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Chairman. And coming back to the Constitutional Working Party, I'd like to convey my thanks to the leader in carrying out the practice of reviewing our Constitution. I agree with all that's been proposed, and specifically support the introduction of an independent person on the Audit Committee, which should help with our SIP for guidance on that committee as we assist the Council with its work. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, as per usual, I'll go straight to the points raised. Councillor Harris, you say you were disappointed. On page 212, it says the reason why the whole of our working party decided that we shouldn't go ahead, because this is because of the imminent national review of planning delegations that is due to take place. And I think you referred to it as being in May. So that's why we didn't go ahead with it, because we wanted to see what would come of that. But if we're talking about disappointment, I was disappointed that Reform didn't turn up to my working party. That was very disappointing, that they didn't come and make those points that you so eloquently made tonight in this chamber. But that's another time, something for another time perhaps. Councillor Platt, thank you for reading it. And I agree with you, the SIPFA recommendation and the growing of the audit committee is one of the things that we were very keen on, and not having an independent chairman on that audit committee was also another thing we agreed on. So thank you for reading that, and thank you for the endorsement. And with that, Chairman, I'm happy to move it.
We go to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Carried. That's carried. Item 17, a report submitted to the Council for Overview and Scrutiny Committee. There are no reports. Item 18, reference to the Human Resource and Council Tax Committee, Human Resources Committee and agreements of Statutory Office of Non-Stationary Chief Office Appeals. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. At its meeting held on the 24th of February 2025, Minute 20 refers that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee, the committee, were made aware of the context of officers seeking to amend the terms of reference of the Human Resources Committee. The committee recommendations are on page 252, and I'd like to move the formal recommendations on page 253.
Have we a seconder?
Second, Chair.
Second. Gary Coe. Yeah, go to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Any abstentions? Carried. Item 19.
Chairman, if I may, I now declare an interest and leave for the next two items. Mr. Ford will sit next to you, and Mrs. Wilkins will come and sit alongside.
Okay, thanks. Right, agenda item 19, reference to the Human Resource and Council Tax Committee Pay Policy Statement 2025-26, pages 267 to 290. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. At its meeting held on the 24th of February 2025, Minute 17 states the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee had considered a report of the Head of People, A3, which had sought the committee's endorsement of the draft pay policy statement 2025-26. Full council are asked to support the recommendation, which is on page 268.
A seconder for that?
Second, Chair.
Councillor Calver. We go to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? Carried. Item 20, reference to the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee, review changes of the Chief Executive's terms and conditions. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you. At its meeting held on the 24th February 2025, minute 16 states the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee considered a report from the Head of People A2 regarding the outcome of the review of the Chief Executive's terms and conditions of employment. The committee was notified that the Chief Executive role was considered critical in the formation and implementation of those proposals for tendering, given his essential role. The Leader of the Council had requested that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee review the previously agreed reduction to his working hours and endorse, also recommending to full council that it was reversed to support his continued leadership and involvement in these significant initiatives. Members also noted the decision of full council at its meeting on the 21st of January 2025, whereby full council mandates the Leader of the Council and Chief Executive to seek to ensure that the voice of tendering and North Essex more generally is as strong as possible in any negotiations around devolution and local government reorganisation, recognising its opportunities and challenges. I would like the Council to note the committee recommendations on page 293 and formally propose the formal recommendations on 293 and 294.
Have we got a seconder for that?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to second this. I did have a speech, but it's getting late, so I won't bother with it. What I would say is, as the closest person to the Chief Exec, when it comes to LGR and devolution, the amount of hours that we both have to put in at this current time is way beyond the 27. In fact, if I had to say anything about our Chief Exec, is that he's never done 27 hours since we gave it to him. Just to give you a testament to what he actually does, he was up at 5:30 this morning to be in London by 8:30, and that was for an LGR meeting. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Platt.
Thank you, Chairman. And with your permission, I'd like to just make a brief statement from Councillor Guglielmi, because he specifically wished this to be known. He'd like to congratulate the leader for having set this in motion. We all know that our CEO never really stuck to the 25% reduction in hours which took effect on the 31st of March 2022. We all know that even when he is away on leave, his first requirement is to ensure that wherever he goes, he is to have a good internet connection so he can stay in touch with us all. I'm not saying that he is a control freak, Councillor Guglielmi's words, but rather someone who is extremely passionate about tendering, the work and achievements he has rendered to the district, and the care he has for us members and the entire staff. Since the Human Resources Subcommittee panel reviewed the Chief Executive's terms and conditions of employment, Essex Devolution and LGR was announced and progressed at a speed of knots. I speak on behalf of everyone here, I'm absolutely delighted that our Chief Executive's role in progressing LGR is as prominent as it has been agreed by the other 14 authorities. Indeed, with the support of our own leader, he's managed to complete consensus amongst all other Essex leaders, as was discussed at the extraordinary full council meeting on the 11th of March. This achievement did not come by luck, but through sheer hard work, perseverance, and many hours of trials and tribulations. No comment. The statutory 37.5 hours of contracted employment per week would no way reflect the time he has put into this. He has and always will have the best tendering interests at heart, and I absolutely support the recommendations on page 279. Thank you for your indulgence.
Councillor Amos.
Yeah, I'd just like to associate myself with the comments made by Councillor Guglielmi.
Councillor Talbot.
Oh, Councillor Talbot.
Nothing to do with the item on the agenda, Chairman, but just the fact I want it to be legal but I do believe our standing orders say our meetings finish at 10 o'clock unless an extension is moved and agreed by the meeting. I think that's right. I'm not reading from the book or anything, but if it is, I move an extension of 15 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to remind members there was an amendment to the Constitution passed some few years ago that said meetings should not go on longer than 3 hours without the permission of the meeting. As we started at 7:30, that means we can go to 10:30 before we trip over that particular tripwire. But speaking personally, I liked Councillor Talbot's thinking.
Right, we go to the vote. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried unanimously. Settled all right? Yeah. Right, item 21, a report from the Chief Executive, review of allocation of seats to political groups on other councils. Pages 305 to 314.
Thank you, Chairman, and here we are again. I'm just happy to move this as is. I have to move A to E, and this is the appendix on the table, not the one in your books or on your digital screens. So I'm just happy to move that, Chairman, and I thank all the other group leaders who supported us in doing this.
Do we have a seconder?
Happy to second, Chairman.
Right. Let me go to the vote. All those in favour? Any abstentions? That's carried.
Chairman, if I may, just to clarify, you voted on A to E, as Councillor Stevenson said. You now need to vote on F. Which is, all has been moved and seconded, but you voted on A to E, as Councillor Stevenson said, but because of the anomalies of the Widdicombe, we now need to vote on F as well. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Chairman. I am happy to move F.
Seconder. Seconder.
And I'm happy to second, Chairman.
Apologies, Mr. Chairman. In moving F, could the leader say which councillor is going to put on the committees that are mentioned in F, and which ones he may wish to leave vacant? Thank you.
My apologies. Okay, in moving F, my plan is to not put anybody on the non-aligned group on any of the committees. And the reason being is I've had a quick check of the 7 committee meetings that are between this full council and the annual meeting of the council where we will have to do this again. There is only one committee meeting, and that's the planning committee. And having spoken to the only non-aligned member of this council, he does not want to go on it, is how he put it. So, Chairman, I am happy to leave all spaces empty, and that was a unanimous decision amongst group leaders when we had the Widdicombe review. Thank you.
We vote on it. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. 22, question pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 1112, pages 315 to 316. Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Chairman. At the 6th of August 2024 full council meeting, I asked a question about investment in Clacton Town Centre, and particularly the wrapping of the empty shops. The answer I received was that this will be done in the autumn, and yes, in the beginning of November, some shops were indeed wrapped. Disappointingly though, there's still at least 8 shops not wrapped and looking unkempt, and so the town still looks scruffy and dirty, and it's not likely to encourage any business investment in the future. My question therefore is, where is the town centre regeneration money for Clacton that matches what has been invested in Dovercourt High Street? Thank you.
Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Chairman, and I apologise in advance if members are going to hear some of this, which has already been said in the state of tender and report by the leader. Chairman, I'd firstly like to thank Councillor Amos for his question regarding investment in the regeneration of Clacton Town Centre. I can confirm that while some progress was made in November with several shop fronts being successfully wrapped, it is correct to point out that the number of premises remain untreated. Whilst it remains our ambition to wrap all empty shops, we are not able to make any adaptations to privately owned premises without the express permission of the property owner. And despite continued attempts, we've been unable to gain permissions for the remaining empty shops. In contrast to the position in Dovercourt High Street, where most properties are represented by a few local estate agents, Clacton's commercial property landscape is significantly more fragmented. To provide an example of the challenges we are faced with, one property owner has been contacted on 9 separate occasions and has yet to even respond. Therefore, we cannot wrap the shops without the owner's consent. In addition to shop wrapping, the council has significantly improved town centre cleaning, and through the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, supported local organisations to stage town centre events, a pop-up art gallery, and provided grants for shopfront improvements, which will also continue through 2025. I'm also pleased to say that in the coming weeks and months, you will see an installation of new banners around the town centre to provide a vibrancy and further animate the area. Public safety will be improved through improvements to the town's CCTV coverage, with 20 cameras being upgraded and new cameras installed at additional locations, including the High Street. And where necessary, we will be working across the organisation to consider the range of enforcement powers available to encourage business owners to address poorly managed properties. I should point out, however, that this is just the beginning of our significant ambition for regeneration. As members of the council will be aware, the Clacton Town Board was set up as part of the previous government's long-term plan for towns funding criteria, bringing together community leaders, local businesses, the community and voluntary sector, education and health services, police, fire and crime commissioner and Tender and District Council to develop a strategic vision for the town. I'm pleased to say that earlier this month, the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government announced that Clacton is one of the 75 areas...
Time's up, Ivan, can you...
I thought that was... I didn't know it timed.
Yeah? Guys, one?
Oh, yeah.
A point of information, really. Yeah, you mentioned the Clacton Town Board. I'd like to know how often it sits, whether the local MP actually sits on it, as it's supposed to. And if you could give me regular information in future, that'd be great, because I want to ask these questions. Thank you.
There was a lot more to say, but I can answer that for clarification on providing a lot more information. We are about to organise some work, the portfolio working parties for the LUF schemes, the community regeneration schemes and the capital regeneration scheme in Dovercourt. So we will be bringing more information to those members on that working party. I can answer his second question, his first question was that the town board, which was set up under a terms of reference, that terms of reference hasn't changed. And I can remember that the former MP, Charles Watson, was there at every meeting. Unfortunately, so far, we haven't seen the present MP at any of the meetings. Thank you.
Just for clarification, the full response will be in the minutes. Thank you.
Item 23, urgent matters for debate. Is there none? There's none. Date of the next scheduled meeting of the Council, annual meeting on Tuesday, 29th of April 2025 at 7:30 p.m. Town Hall, Station Road, Clacton. I formally close this meeting, and please drive a safe journey home, all of you.
Please be upstanding.